जय सुभद्रमय जय गौरानिताय जय गौरानिताय जय गौरानिताय जय गौरानिताय जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय प्रभुपाद Sriman Narsimha Shri Srimad His Divine Grace of Vaishnava Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sriman Narsimha Parivajikacharya Shri Srimad His Divine Grace of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samavita Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Jainitai Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 1. Entitled Genealogical Table of the Daughters of Manu, Text 4. Yastayo Purusha Sakshad Yastayo Purusha Sakshad Vishnu Yagya Swarupadrak Vishnu Yagya Swarupadrak Yastri sa dakshina bhuter Yastri sa dakshina bhuter Amsha bhutana payini Amsha bhutana payini Yastayo purusha sakshat Vishnu yagya swarupadrak Yastri sa dakshina bhuter Amsha bhutana payini Yastayo purusha sakshat Vishnu yagya swarupadrak Yastri sa dakshina bhuter Amsha bhutana payini Yastayo purusha sakshat Vishnu yagya swarupadrak Yastri sa dakshina bhute Amsha bhutana payini Yastayo purusha sakshat Amsha bhutana payini Yaha, one who, Tayoho, out of them, Purushaha, male, Sakshat, directly, Vishnu, the Supreme Lord, Yajna, Yajna, Swarupadruk, accepting the form, Ya, the other, Stri, female, Sa, she, Dakshina, Dakshina, Bhutehe, of the goddess of fortune, Amsha Bhuta, being a plenary expansion, Anapayini, never to be separated. Translation purport by His Divine Grace Sesha Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: of the two children born of Akuti, the male child was directly an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his name was Yajna, which is another name of Lord Vishnu. The female child was a partial incarnation of Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, the eternal consort of Lord Vishnu. Purport. Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, is the eternal consort of Lord Vishnu. Here it is stated that both the Lord and Lakshmi, who are eternal consorts, appeared from Akuti simultaneously. Both the Lord and his consort are beyond this material creation, as confirmed by many authorities, Narayana Paro Vyaktat. Therefore, their eternal relationship cannot be changed, and Yajna, the boy born from Akuti, later married the goddess of fortune. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashlakaya Chakshumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadam Yam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Rugnathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapte Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpaturubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. If you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, you'll see Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami in the first section, the Adilila section of Chaitanya Charitamrita. He talks about the 6 principles of the absolute truth. Right? We understand when we talk about absolute truth, it is not just Krishna that we are talking about. Srila Prabhupada explains, Vadanti tattatvadas tattvam yajnanam advyam parmeti paramatmi bhagwaniti shabdyate. So the absolute truth Srila Prabhupada mentions is understood on 3 platforms. Bhagavan is the topmost, Paramatma and Brahman. But Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, he starts off Chaitanya Charitamrita by explaining 6 different aspects of the absolute truth. He says, Vande Gurun Isha Bhaktan, Isham Ishavatarakan, Tat Prakasham Shritat Shakti, Krishna Chaitanya Samyakam. So we can recap that. Vande Gurun Isha Bhaktan, the Guru and Isha Bhakta, which means the devotees of the Lord. If you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, sorry, I know we're discussing Bhagavatam, but I have a picture of Panchatattva that just came up here. So it just prompted me to speak about Mahaprabhu. You'll see that when the devotees in Navadvip, when they used to visit Jagannath Puri every year, instead of coming to see Lord Jagannath, where would they first go? They would first go and visit Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami raises the point that the Lord is there in Nilachal, Jagannath. So people go to see Jagannath first. That is how people would think. But the devotees of Mahaprabhu, they go and see him first. They go and see the devotees first. So what Shiva explains this to his wife Parvati, that higher than the worship of Lord Vishnu is the worship of the devotees. And then they would go and Mahaprabhu would embrace them, he would glorify them. And then after some time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would tell them, okay, go and take bath in the river, and then go and see Lord Jagannath, and then take prasad, take Jagannath Mahaprasad. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he glorifies Guru and Isha Bhaktan first. Then Isham, Ishavatarakan, the avatars of Lord Krishna. Tat Prakasham, Tat Shakti. So we hear this, we see avatar and we see prakash. Panchatattvatvam Krishna, Bhakta Rupa Surukam, Bhakta Avataram Bhaktakyam, Namami Bhakti Shaktikam. So prakash and avatar, what is the difference? Avatar is an expansion of Krishna, but they are not empowered as much as Swayambhu Krishna himself. So for example, Vamanadev or Kurmadev, they're directly expansions of Krishna, but they don't have the full, they don't exhibit the full opulence of Krishna. But someone like Balaram, it is said that Balaram is more different from Krishna. He only wears blue, whereas Krishna wears yellow. He's whitish, Krishna is blackish. But Balaram, if he wants to, he can exhibit the full potency that Krishna manifests as well. So, avatars of Krishna that can exhibit the full potency of Krishna, they're known as Prakash. And those avatars which don't exhibit the full potency of Krishna, they're known as avatars. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he glorifies Tat Prakash, Ishavatarakan, and then Tat Shakti, which is the energy of Lord Krishna. Krishna Chaitanya Samyakam. This is how Lord Chaitanya is to be known elsewhere. So two references we gave, right? We gave this one, the first verse of Adi Lila, of Chaitanya Charitamrita, then Panchatattvatmakam. Then he says also, there's another verse in Adi Lila which says, Krishna Guru Bhakta Shakti Avatar Prakash, Krishna Korena Vilas Echaya, Krishna Echaya Korena Vilas. Again he says the same thing, Krishna Guru Bhakta Shakti Avatar and Prakash. 6 principles. So Srila Prabhupada mentions that when a king goes to a foreign country, just like we see Bhagavatam, when Parikshit Maharaj in the first canto, he was out on his conquest and he meets Kali Purush. He's not there by himself. He's flanked by his ministers, he's flanked by an army, a whole convoy or envoy. So similarly, when Krishna comes to this mature world, he comes with Guru, Bhakta, Shakti, Avatar, Prakash. All 6 principles of the Absolute Truth occur. In this verse of Bhagavatam, we are seeing that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Yagya, is appearing as the son of Akuti. And because Krishna cannot be separated from these principles of the Absolute Truth, one of the principles of the Absolute Truth which is coming is Shakti. Of course, there's 2 Shaktis. There's Parashakti and then there's, or Devi Shakti, and then there's Aparashakti, which is material energy. So spiritual energy, material energy. And sometimes it's difficult to understand both Krishna and Krishna's energy as well. Just like recently I was reading 3rd canto of Bhagavatam, previous chapter, when Lord Varahadev was appearing. So as you know, Lord Varahadev, he comes from the nose of Lord Brahma. And then he starts off really tiny and then slowly he grows. And then Brahma's Manasaputras, Marichi, Atriyangira, Pulastipulaha, Kratubrigu, Vasishtha, Daksha, Narada, they start to speculate. Who is this that has come? They've never seen anything like this before. And it is not until Varahadev roars, he roars, then they can understand that this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So what is the lesson that we can understand? That we can understand Krishna through transcendental sound. Even if Krishna comes in front of us, we cannot understand him unless we hear about him first. The Hare Krishna Mahamantra represents the flute of Krishna. So we're hearing the flute of Krishna. This is the very same sound, the Hare Krishna mantra is the very same sound that when the gopis heard at night time, they ran to follow that sound. So they were attentive and they followed that sound to the Rasasthali. So every morning when we chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra, we are following in the footsteps of the gopis. We're also trying to attentively hear this sound vibration. That's one instance, Bhagavatam explains, that the devotees of Lord Krishna understood that he was Krishna, not by seeing him, but by hearing about him. The same instance happens in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, when Lord Narsimha appears as well. Again, he comes out of the pillar and everyone is stunned. Everyone is afraid. Who is this? Actually, he roars when he comes, but even before he comes from the pillar, there is this cracking sound and there's this roar. And by hearing that, again, Prahlad Maharaj and all the devotees there, they can understand this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we can understand, speaking of Lord Narsimha, the story comes to my mind that this happened in Mayapur. Of course, there's many different leaders of Mayapur Narsimha. But so there was one devotee, and he brought his father to Mayapur. And then his father appreciated the worship of Radha Madhav. He appreciated the worship of Krishna. But he just couldn't get his head around why have Narsimha in the same room as Radha Krishna? Like, you're already worshipping Krishna, why Narsimha? Who is Narsimha? So he had this cynical sort of attitude. So one day during Darshanarti, his son brought his father, and they had darshan of Panchatattva, Radha Madhav, and Narsimha. And as the father was taking darshan of Narsimha, all of a sudden he saw the head of Narsimha to be the head of Madhav. And then he was like confused. He rubbed his eyes and he looked at the altar of Radha Madhav and he saw Madhav was there smiling. And then again he looked at Narsimha and the exact same head of Madhav was still there. He looked back and forth, and I finally got the realization, actually Narsimha is not different from Madhav. But he understood this by the mercy of his son who was a devotee. So Krishna is difficult to understand, but we can understand him by his name, his sound vibration. Krishna's energy, speaking of Lakshmi Devi, she's also difficult to understand as well. Take the example of Lord Brahma at the start of the creation. He's just Padmaja, he's come out of he's taken his birth on the lotus flower, which has come from the navel of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, and he's sitting there, it's all darkness all around, he's the only living entity in the universe. And then he wants to understand, who am I, what is this, what am I supposed to do? So what does he do? He starts to climb down the lotus stem to understand what is the source of my creation. In other words, what is Brahma doing? He's trying to understand the energy, the material energy, the world around him with his own senses. He's trying to use his own intelligence, even though his body is made of intelligence. No one is smarter than Lord Brahma. Again, in 3rd canto, when Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakshipu are in the womb of Diti, she held that pregnancy for 100 years because she didn't want them to be born. And darkness is shrouding the universe. So the demigods, they go to Lord Brahma. And they address Lord Brahma as the personality of Godhead. They address Lord Brahma as Bhagavan. And they ask him, why is this happening to the universe? Why is there darkness? Because Srila Prabhupada explains, they refer to Brahma as Bhagavan because he's Trikala Jnani. He understands past, present and future. Krishna has invested himself into Brahma's heart. Tena Brahma Hridaya Adikave Muyanti Yat Surya Tejo Vari Visham. The demigods get confused, but Brahma is not confused. He has Krishna's mercy that he will not get bewildered and he will not get proud in his service of creation. Still, this Brahma is going down and he's using his empirical senses, the Jnanendriyas, to try to understand this creation. And he keeps climbing down, but he can't come to the bottom of the stem of lotus. In fact, he can't even see Vishnu. Garbhada Vishaya Vishnu. So what does he do? Does he keep climbing down? He stops. He puts the brakes on. He realizes he can't understand Krishna and Krishna's energy, Krishna's creation. He cannot understand. He goes back up, sits down, he gets the instruction to perform tapasya, and he performs tapasya. And when he performs tapasya, he understands Krishna and Krishna's energy. He shakes hands with Krishna. And he gets the vision of Golok Vrindavan. Kataganam, Natyam Gamanam, Apivamshi Priyasaki, Sayatrak Shirabdi Sravati Surabhi Vyashya Sumahan. Right? Vamshi Saki. He sees Krishna's flute is very dear to Krishna. It's a most sacred object in Golok Vrindavan. Everyone there is not walking, but they're dancing. Everyone there is not talking, but they're singing. The cows are freely giving milk. The trees are desire trees. So he gets full knowledge. So this is the way that we understand Krishna and Krishna's energy. A couple of weeks ago, you know how we're going through this really hot period right now, intense heat. So I think a couple of weeks ago, when I was going to sleep, the window was wide open, a fan was going on, and then slowly it started to rain. And that's really nice, you know, when it's really hot weather and it starts to rain. And then, as I was drifting off to sleep, all of a sudden I could smell the mud, the soil, right? Because when it's hot, the sun heats up, right, the ground. The rain comes, it cools the ground, and the smell is released into the atmosphere. So I was smelling that, and because in Bhagavatam we've been discussing about Samkhya, Kapila Dev's Samkhya philosophy, then as I was falling asleep I started to think, so the smell is coming from the earth, and that is coming from water, from which taste comes, and that is coming from fire, from which form comes, and that is coming from air, which touch comes, and that is coming from ether, which sound comes, and that is coming from the false ego, touched by goodness, passion, ignorance. False ego is coming from Mat Tattva. Mat Tattva is coming from Pradhan. Pradhan is coming from Mahavishnu. So this is the mercy of Kapila Dev, that even one who is drifting off to sleep just by smelling the earth, you can think of Krishna. That is the whole point of Kapila Dev's philosophy on Samkhya, that in your experience, in your interaction with this mature world, you can relate everything back to Krishna. You won't get bewildered. You won't think that the material energy is separate and distinct. It's separated from Krishna. There are two causes. We know the Sanskrit word for causes. What is the word? Karana. So, Sarva Karana Karanam. So, Acharyas mentioned that there's, generally speaking, two types of causes. There is the Nimitta Karana and the Upadan Karana. Right? So, Nimitta Karana is the original cause, and Upadan Karana is the material cause or the immediate cause. So Srila Prabhupada talks about different types of logics. One logic that Srila Prabhupada talks about is called Tandu Vishchika Nyaya. the scorpion comes out from the bag of rice. Right? And one thinks that scorpions are taking birth from the rice. I remember a few years back, Babu and myself, we were doing travel in Sankirtan. We were in a place called Cowra, which is like 5 hours inland from New South Wales. And we were in our cabin, and we woke up in the morning and we actually saw a little scorpion in our cabin. First time I saw a scorpion actually. It was very hot as well, maybe that's why they were coming out. They were very small, but it looked very scary. So we took a picture, we showed it to Ganesham Prabhu, and he's like, what are you doing sending a picture to me? Take it out. So Tamil Vishtika Nyaya. One sees the rice, and because one can't understand the eggs, how the eggs got into the rice, the scorpion's eggs, one automatically thinks that the rice is giving birth to the scorpion. So one is looking at the immediate cause, the material cause, which is called Upadana Karana. They can't see the Nimitta Karana, which is the original cause. Another example can be someone who was recently in Bhagavatam class. They were talking about how when a baby takes birth from the mother, the baby is naturally very attached to the mother. Because the mother, they can feel, they can touch, they can see. They don't understand how the father was related for them taking birth. So we tend to get lost between Krishna and Krishna's energy. The material energy is relatively easy to understand, but the original cause is difficult to understand. For example, let's say if I walk out of the temple and I'm walking down to North Sydney Station, and as I'm walking down to North Sydney Station, there's a banana peel in the middle of the road, and I step on it, and I lose traction, and I fall down, and I hit my head. So what would a normal person conclude as to the reason why my head got hurt? Banana peel, which is the Upadana Karana, which is the immediate material cause. But the actual reason is what? Karma. You're supposed to receive some sort of happiness, some sort of distress. You're supposed to receive that. And you've received it through the agency of the banana peel. So the original cause, in this case, in this example, the karma, which is difficult to see, is difficult to understand, but the immediate cause is easy to understand. And then you talk about Mayavad philosophy. This is how Mayavadis, they misunderstand the spiritual world. Shankaracharya, who is an avatar of Lord Shiva, Vishnu told him to come down and spread Mayavad Bhasha for two reasons. First is that Lord Vishnu wanted to separate the genuine Vaishnavas from those demoniac people who were trying to use the Vaishnava philosophy for their own purposes. So he said, go and spread some false logic so that such people will get distracted, and those who are pure in heart, they will understand that this is actually false, it's actually a lie, and they will stay on the path of bhakti. The other reason is because previously Lord Buddha had come and he had spread ahimsa and he had rejected the Vedas. So Krishna slowly wanted to bring the Vedas back to the forefront. So if you look at Mayavadis, practically speaking, they are not different from devotees. They are in the mode of goodness. They wake up early, they do tapasya, they chant the holy names, they read Shastra. The only difference is that they think, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains, four things Mayavadis think. They think that Krishna is imaginary. They think that the spiritual world, Vaikuntha, is imaginary. They think that the process of bhakti is imaginary. And they think that the paraphernalia used to perform devotional service is imaginary as well. Four things. For example, paraphernalia means, like for example, we offer different articles to Krishna in artis, or Tulsi Mari stand, or whatever. The instruments. They think all of these things are imaginary. But other than these four conceptions, practically they're identical to devotees. So there's two different types of Mayavadis, and I want to say this because we glorify Srila Prabhupada as Nirvishesha Shunyavadi. So there's two different types of Mayavadis. One type of Mayavadi is known as the Brahma Parinam Vadi, and the other type is known as the Vivartavadi. So I'll explain. It's important for us to know this on a philosophical level. Brahma Parinam. Parinam means what? Parinam means change. Brahma Parinam. What that means is that those Mayavadis who are Brahma Parinamvadis, they think that this mature world is basically a manifestation of Brahman, which has transformed to become this mature world. So everything you see in this mature world, animate and inanimate objects, including all of us, jivas, we are transformations, changes, parinam, of the original Brahman, which is oneness. So they say that when this oneness, spiritual energy called Brahman, when it transforms and changes, it creates this mature world and all the varieties, all the mature varieties that we see within it. So what is the natural conclusion of this philosophy? The natural conclusion of this philosophy is that everything we see is Brahman. You are Brahman, I am Brahman. There's no difference between me and this mic stand. But then the question is, which they can't answer, is where does the concept of Maya come from? Because Maya is illusioning the conditioned jivas in this mature world, and that means, Srila Prabhupada mentions, that means that Maya is stronger, Maya is more powerful than, because she can put Brahman into illusion. So they can't answer this question. And they mistake one verse from the Chandogya Upanishad, which says, Ekam Eva Dvitiyam. The actual meaning of this verse, Ekam Eva Dvitiyam, means, as Srila Prabhupada translates, he says, the absolute truth is one without a second. That means Krishna is one without a second. There is no one equal to Krishna or greater than Krishna. Asama Urdhvam. But they misinterpret this Ekam Eva Dvitiyam by saying that Ekam, that Brahman, becomes Dvitiyam, becomes all the varieties in this mature world. So this is the Brahma Parinamvadis. The second type of Mayavadi is known as the Vivartavadis. Vivarta means what? Does anyone know? No. Vivarta means illusion. Means false, falsity. So Vivartavadis, these type of Mayavadis, they say that this mature world is not a transformation of Brahman, it is actually false. It is an illusion. The real Brahman exists separately in the spiritual sky, but what we see and what we experience here, including our own existence, is Vivarta. So these are the Shunyavadis that we glorify Prabhupada. But then they use the argument, and you must have heard of this argument if you read Chaitanya Charitamrita. The argument they use is the logic between the snake and the rope. That if I'm walking, again, let's say I'm walking down to North Sydney, unlikely this would happen in North Sydney, but if I'm walking down to North Sydney and I'm reading a book, Bhagavatam, and there's a rope in the middle of the road, and because I'm so absorbed in reading, I just happen to glance at the rope, and I think it's a snake, and I get scared. But then I look again, it's actually a rope. So that act of mistaking the rope to be a snake is illusion. Similarly, the Vivartavadis say, that act of seeing this mature world as real instead of illusion, that is the falsity. But then Srila Prabhupada counters this argument. He says that if you mistake a rope for being a snake, that means a snake must exist somewhere in reality. So he says it's actually a very weak argument. Similarly, if you say that the forms of this mature world are false, are an illusion. They must exist somewhere for them to be manifested here. And we see the perfection of that in Brahma's prayers to Lord Krishna, where he explains that all the forms we have in this material world are existing in perfection in the spiritual world. I was listening to a lecture by my Guru Maharaj. You know Agasura Lila? So Agasura was known as Baki, Baka Anuja. Baki is Putana, and Baka is the heron demon. So Krishna had killed Baki, and he had killed Bakasur, liberated them. And then Agasur came, and he had this mystic siddhi that he could transform himself into a giant python. So that's how he decided to kill Krishna and the cowherd boys. He was something like 9 miles long, and as he sat there in Braja, the bottom half of his mouth was resting on the ground, and the top half of his mouth went all the way up to the clouds. And the cowherd boys came with Krishna, and Balaram wasn't there that time. We know Balaram wasn't there because that day was actually Balaram's birthday. So Rohini Mata, she wanted to keep Balaram back at home, dress him nicely, feed him nicely. So that day in the morning, Krishna went with his cowherd boys toward the calves, not the cows, the calves. Because at that time Krishna was known as Vatsapal, not Gopal. And before they even met Agasur, Srimad Bhagavatam talks about how they had pastimes amongst themselves. Krishna went outside in the morning, outside of his house. He blew his bugle to assemble all the cowherd boys to come to his house. And each one of the cowherd boys brought their own lunch package, lunch parcel, their tiffin that their mothers had made. And as they entered the forest, they had so much fun. Not only were they wrestling and playing games, but one of the things that they did is they took someone's lunch and they threw it far away. And that cowherd boy would go and run and try and get it, and then that cowherd boy would throw it to someone else. And then he would run after that cowherd boy, and they would keep throwing the lunch everywhere. And then finally the cowherd boy would just cry, "Why won't they give me my lunch back?" Or another thing that they did is they took one cowherd boy's lunch and they threw that lunch at the base of a tree, and at the base of a tree there were thorny, prickly plants so that he couldn't get it anymore. So I was confused, so I asked my Guru Maharaj once in personal darshan. As I was reading this the first time, I asked him, I thought the spiritual world is a place of Satchitananda, bliss and happiness. Why is it that the cowherd boys are crying because they want their lunch? If I was in that position, I would be depressed, upset with my friends, with Krishna. And my Guru Maharaj said that we can't understand the platform at which the cowherd boys are in. They're not thinking about satisfying their tongue. They're not thinking about their lunch. They're thinking that I will cry because by my crying, it will give Krishna pleasure. This is Sakya Bhav, right? Sometimes when little boys, little kids, they're playing, sometimes they bully each other, and the winning team, they feel bliss seeing the opposing team losing. So to give Krishna pleasure, the cowherd boys cry. Just like it's mentioned in, Rupa Goswami mentions in Nectar of, Prabhupada mentions in Nectar of Devotion as well, that one of the qualities of the gopis is Nijanga Bhakti. So one of the qualities of those who are in the Madhuri Ras is that they give their anga, their body, to the service of Krishna. So in the same way the cowherd boys, we can see, so selflessly, they give everything. They give their emotions even. Whatever they emote, it's for the pleasure of Krishna. So after that pastime, they had their lunch, and then they're walking across the Vraja in the forests, and then they come across this demon. And some of the cowherd boys think that this is just a a toy. It's like an amusement. Like, what is it? Like an amusement theme ride, something like that. Again, think it's fake. And they want to play with it even. But some of them, they can actually hear this thing breathing. And they think, oh, we shouldn't go inside. But overall, the consensus is that let's go inside. We're in an adventurous mood. We're cowboys. And anyway, Krishna will protect us, no matter what happens. Now here's the point that I'm getting to. The point that I'm getting to is that the Acharyas mention that the cowherd boys decided that we want to go inside this demon's mouth. Why? Because we want Krishna to save us. But from Krishna's side, he didn't want the cowherd boys to go inside. He doesn't want his devotees to be in trouble. He's Bhakta Vatsala. Rakshatiti Vishwaso. But because Krishna cares for the desires of the living entities, Krishna allowed the cowherd boys to fulfill their desire. Krishna didn't want them to step into the mouth of Aghasur. But the cowherd boys, you could say in one sense, against the wishes of Krishna, wanted to go inside for whatever reason. So Krishna allowed them to go inside. So Krishna allows the jiva to fulfill their desire, even if Krishna doesn't want that. Now here we see a situation just with Krishna's devotees. What to speak of us here in this mature world. But we can understand in these two ways. The jiva, when the jiva wants to enjoy this mature world, Krishna allows that fulfillment by allowing the jiva to come to this mature world. But when the jiva becomes a devotee, and the jiva wants to act on behalf of Krishna, to engage, let's say in the Sankirtan Yagya, to save the conditioned souls on behalf of Krishna, then Krishna will interfere with the desire of the conditioned soul, and he will go with the desire of the devotee to bring that soul back. Srila Prabhupada is glorified. One, I forgot this disciple's name, something Shastri. He glorifies Srila Prabhupada. He says, Vrindavane Ramanareti Prasiddha Bhumo Tatrapi Krishna Balaram Supadamule Jnanam Param Parama Krishna Sudurmati Uktam Dantastu Deva Prabhupada Namo Namaste. So this is known as the Prabhupada Stotra. There's actually 5 or 6 shlokas in that stotra. It was made by someone Shastri. He was a Sanskrit Pandit, but he was a scholarly disciple of Srila Prabhupada. And he devised these 5 shlokas to glorify Srila Prabhupada. And he presented these shlokas to Srila Prabhupada at a Guru Purnima festival in Mayapur. And he read these out in front of Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada really loved these shlokas. So after that, in ISKCON for some time, every day after Guru Puja, everyone would recite these shlokas. So one of the shlokas which I just quoted was from that Prabhupada Stotra. So in this shloka, Srila Prabhupada is glorified. Vrindavane Ramanareti Prasiddha Bhumo Tatrapi Krishna Balaram Supad Mule. Srila Prabhupada always is situated in Ramanareti in Vrindavan. If you go to Ramanareti in Vrindavan, you'll see the main road is called Bhaktivedanta Marg. And his Krishna Balaram temple is situated there. And not only is Krishna Balaram temple situated there, his Samadhi is situated there as well. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada is eternally situated in Ramanareti in Vrindavan, at the feet of Krishna Balaram Supad Mule, at the feet of Krishna and Balaram. Jnanam Param Parama Krishna Suduramti Uktam. Srila Prabhupada said that he will never die. Srila Prabhupada said that through his books he will always be alive. So from Vrindavan, from Ramanareti, from that place in the entire manifestation, both spiritual and material, Srila Prabhupada is spreading Jnanam Param. supreme, highest of highest spiritual knowledge, broadcasting that throughout the universe. To that, Srila Prabhupada, we offer our respectful obeisances. There's two types of bijas that you can get. We glorify bija, right? And I'll finish with this point. Brahmanya Brahmite Kona Bhagwan Jiva Guru Krishna Prasadipaya Bhakti Lata Bija. So we are sitting here as devotees because we have some bija. We have some Bhakti Lata Bija. So what does that bija mean actually? Srila Prabhupada explains it in two different ways. I was reading his own Shiva Maharaj's book, Shuddha Bhakti Chandamani, and there Maharaj was explaining that in one place, Srila Prabhupada explains that this Bhakti Lata Bij can be translated as the methods, rules, and regulations of devotional service. So those of us who are very attentively endeavoring, or at least desiring, if we're not practically doing, to follow the rules, the regulations, and the